All right, here we go. Um, this particular video, I think if it's going to be beneficial to anybody, it'll be for the book recommendations. Um, yeah, but it is kind of like, not kind of, it's what I'm currently studying or learning, self-learning, um, somewhat the projects that I have that I'm like doing right now or that are like that I have planned, although there's not too many. And then along these lines are going to be the books that I'm using because these are books that I've culled from like various sources or that I've culled from I have many books like language learning books. I have a lot of like social criticism books. I have a lot of chess books. And I've done like yeah, I've been into these fields or into these topics for a long time. And so the books that I've chosen now are like roughly the best of what I've come across and good enough to where I'm dedicating my time to studying those particular books ahead of others. Anyway, so I'll get into it. The first list A here is my current focus. These topics, uh, yeah, these topics take up the main of my study time or my spare time that I have for studying. Um, so here we go. Japanese. My Japanese, although I put it at current focus, I'm starting to lose some steam when it comes to Japanese. And I'm also jumping around I'm still trying to figure out which is the best way for me to like approach the language. I tend to use one source, I get excited about it, but then like maybe like chapter 2, chapter 3 into this book I'm like, it's starting to feel like drudgery and I start to avoid it. And I just like, even if I don't make a conscious effort, meant to like skip it, like I tend to skip it and not do it. So I haven't done Japanese in a few days actually. But one good book that I'm using and it's right now it's in the lead as far as like the book that I'm using the most is First Lessons in Japanese by Naganumo. I think the first name is Naoe Naganumo. This is a good book for self-learners, by the way. It gives you a lot of repetition, a minimal vocabulary, and then a bunch of sentences in various forms. Like this is a book, this is a pencil, this is paper, and then this is not a book, this is not pencil, this is not paper. Is that a book? Is that right? Things like that. And the chapters are very manageable. They're like 4 pages each. So there's like 50 chapters in the book, and you're doing a lot of repetition. So it's good. Like it's good, I think, for a self-learner. So it's what I'm using. I'm also studying for the first time in my life, chess opening, like I know a little bit about some other openings, like I know like what it looks like after like the first 3 or 4 moves, but I've not dedicated any real time to trying to like learn a particular chess opening. Um, so I've chosen the Evans Gambit. Originally, I had chosen the Italian game, which like the Evans Gambit starts off basically the same, but I'm not satisfied with the books that I have. And so I found better sources for the Evans Gambit. So like to me that's going to be a bigger difference maker. Like if the source I have I'm enjoying and it's accessible to me, um yeah, I'll have a greater chance of learning the Evans Gambit compared to right now, like the sources that I have for the Italian game. Okay, so I purchased I think it was $25 after the discount, a first time discount like of $12. It's a video series online like Win with Evans Gambit by FM Victor Neustroev. No, Neustroev. He's Russian. He's Russian. He's a FIDE master FM. And I bought this on 365chess.com. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. Um, I also have a bunch of books on Chessable. But every time I buy the Chessable books, I never buy the video series because the video series, like, you're paying like 85 to like $150. for the video series, for the author to walk you through the, yeah, walk you through the lines. Like it's great. Like I would love that, but I'm not shelling out, yeah, I'm not shelling out $85 for a video series. So I just purchase the books, which usually somewhere between like 10 and $25 every now and then. Anyway, so but this one, this I got the video series by Nuestro F for $25 or $26, I forget, something like that. 25, 26 after the $12 discount for the initial video series that you purchase. So yeah, you might want to check out 365chess.com. I also have a book by Moody, who I have never heard of before about the book. But what I liked about the book, it was a little bit simplified. Like chess books, especially chess opening books, like it just they overwhelm me with all the lines and all the like, yeah, and all the variants and all the like tangential lines, like, oh, but in move three, your opponent might do this, this, or this. So now let's go down these three different avenues or these different branches, and then in the second branch, oh, but on the eighth move, he might do this or this, and like, yeah, I get lost. I'm overwhelmed. We're like, so anyway, I'm like a low intermediate player, and like it's too much for me. Like, just give me like the basics, the fundamentals, the main lines, and don't give me all of the, but if he does this, do this, and if he does that, no. Let me just learn the main lines, and then when I lose games or when I analyze games, I will little by little take notice of these things, right? Anyway, so the Evans Gambit Revolution by Moody is along the lines of simplified. He doesn't, I think he does a good job of not overwhelming you, which I think like 95% of chess opening books do. So that's another reason why I've never learned a chess opening. I have my certain study, like, yeah, I have my certain study ways, and like, there are definitely weaknesses. Like, I can't sit there and study a chess book opening like most people can, I think, or a lot of people can, maybe not most. So, like, I have to cater to my limitations, let's say. A man's got to know his limitations. Anyway, Romeo and Juliet, I'm reading Romeo and Juliet again. I don't remember when I last read it, because I tutor and I help like students in English classes, and my one of my students is reading Romeo and Juliet, and she's reading this particular edition by Mowat and Wernstein. I'm not a big fan of this edition, but if you're buying Romeo and Juliet for your kid, and your kid is like, I don't know, 10, 12, 13, 14 years old, and you don't want to expose your kid to the vulgarity in Shakespeare, because there's vulgarity, especially in Romeo and Juliet, the sexual innuendo. This book kind of washes over that stuff. It doesn't like censor it, it doesn't take it out, right? But it doesn't comment on it really. It doesn't really explain like the double entendres, right? And the sexual innuendo, or just like, yeah, or just the plain out vulgarity. Like it doesn't do that. Like, but for me as an adult, I'm like, no, I'm like, I want to know everything. I want to know all. Give me the full, robust explanation of what's going on in this play. Don't like, yeah, don't shy away from giving me the vulgarity too. But again, like, so this is, yeah, I think my student is like 14, so she's like a ninth grader. So the teacher has made this choice. But it's a good translation as far as like everything else. Like, yeah, it's good. It's clear, and like you will understand what's happening in the play, uh, for the most part. So like, I I'm not upset that I'm reading this play. I'm just upset that what I'm not getting. But what I am getting is good. All right. My YouTube channel, I don't know if like you guys watch any of my Spanish videos. I'm putting out a Spanish sentence forming series. I kind of like what I'm doing. I kind of like, yeah, I like my own stuff, but I kind of like the way it's heading, and I'm making slight changes as I make each video, because I make modifications, and I'm like, well, I don't know if I like that, or if I don't know how useful this is. So anyway, but I use this because I also teach Spanish, like I tutor Spanish. So uh, the 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 documents I'm creating for that series, I am starting now to implement with my students. Right. So anyway, that's just part of one of my projects. It's one of the only ones. Okay, stuff that I'm dabbling in. B, Chinese, but I think I'm gonna give up. But I haven't decided yet to give up. Like it's just dabbling, so it's kind of like just like, oh, this is interesting. Let me do this for like an hour today, and then I won't do it again for like 4 or 5 days, or maybe even a week. Anyway, learn Chinese characters by reading. I'm starting to become a convert on the importance of reading to learn a foreign language. Um, this is by Paston. I think he has his company is like All Learning. Excellent books, excellent books. Right. So, and he has a series called Mandarin Companion for like it's graded readers. Excellent stuff from what I've seen. Obviously, I can't read it yet, but like I see the format. I see how he's organizing things. I see how he's presenting things. It looks so good. I almost want to buy them, but I'm like, I could easily buy them all and never get to them. So I'm just trying to go slowly here. This book I have on my Kindle. I have not seen it in hard copy. I tried to find it in hard copy, but I think it's pretty cheap, like $10 on Kindle. So if you want to get introduced to the Hanzi, the Chinese characters, um, I recommend this book. I think his name is John Paston, but it doesn't matter. Paston, and then just look up this is a good way, I think, to get into Chinese. Like just to get your feet wet, and it's a good and it'll build a strong foundation. Okay, Lithuanian. Lithuanian. I almost put it as a focus. I'm starting to like I have more interest in Lithuanian than I have Chinese right now. And I have a good source, by the way. Colloquial Lithuanian, the new edition. It's on the cover, but you can get this online for free. And if you go to the colloquial series, you can pull the audio for free. So I have the whole book and the audio, and it's very good. It's very good. I'm not a fan of the teach yourself books. I'm not a fan of the colloquial books. I'm not a fan of yeah, like but this particular one is like very well done. I'm not saying they don't have good books in like the Teach Yourself series has good books, but for the languages that I've been learning, like it's not my preferred way of learning. Usually because they give me too much dialogue early and then a bunch of vocabulary and like I don't like that. I don't like when I'm over like to me I'm overwhelmed easily. If you give me a chapter of 25 words to learn in one chapter, like I'm not gonna learn it. I'm not gonna learn it. But if you give me like a list of like 12 to 15 and then you start giving me the grammar and then I can like, juggle the vocabulary around and yeah, I can learn. So this book is promising. Surprisingly, there's some decent sources to learn Lithuanian. Like who knew? Anyway, but yeah, I don't know how to pronounce her name or her. I don't know if it's a guy or a girl actually. Ramoniene sounds to me like Lithuanian, and Press doesn't sound Lithuanian. But anyway, those are the authors. Okay, now. Intermittent. So obviously, if you know intermittent means, I. So dabbling in, I'm consistently dabbling in it. I'm just not very deeply studying it, but I'm regularly studying. Intermittent is a regularity too, but it's like I'll study it for like 1 week, then I won't touch it for like 2 weeks, and then I'll come back 2 weeks later, and then I won't touch it for like 3 weeks, and then I'll come back. So it's not it's the regular. It's very irregular. Let's say the intermittent is very regular, where the dabbling in it's not very like it's not a big commitment. It's not like serious study. I'm not sitting down and studying Chinese for 3 hours in a day. But yeah, but I've been doing it kind of regularly. Anyway, so intermittent Latin. Latin, like I should be doing Latin more regularly. It should be one of my foci, but it's not. So I'm just being honest here. The book that I've started to use is Collar and Daniel's First Year Latin. It gives you the grammar in very piecemeal. It gives you the grammar piecemeal to where you might not like it, to where you're like, no, give me more. Like give me the whole first declension chart. Don't just give me the genitive and the nominative, and then later another chapter give me the accusative and the like that would bug me, I think. Like like when I learned Latin, I used Wheelock's Latin grammar, and Wheelock does not divide, right, the declensions or the conjugation charts. Like he doesn't split up. Like if he's going to give you the conjugation of a verb, he's going to give you the whole conjugation for wherever tense it is. He's not going to split it up into like, oh, I'm going to give you the first person singular and the third person singular, and then later I'll give you the second person singular, and like he doesn't do that. But Collar and Daniel do. Um, but for self-study, I highly recommend Collar and Daniel. I don't think there's any real difference as far as grammar explanations, and you get plenty of practice. You get more than enough practice in both, I think, as translating wise. But I wouldn't want to tackle Wheelock's on my own without having already like now I can tackle it because my Latin grammar, like I have a solid foundation in Latin grammar. Um, but anyway, so Collar and Daniel, I recommend this book for self-learners. This is not a bad book, Wheelock's Latin Grammar, but it's probably better with some instruction or some tutor or some guide or some professor. All right, so Latin, um, another interest. Gertrude Himmelfarb, social critic, cultural critic. I put three books here that I have and that I've read and that I've read that I pick from. Yeah, so I might a book might have like 15 to 20 essays, and I've read like, yeah, I'll cherry pick, like at one time I'll read one and then I'll skip around and choose another one. So but the books that I've chosen for her here are probably her most modern, I mean her most popular books. The Roads to Modernity, the British, French, and American Enlightenments, that movement, interesting stuff. Victorian Minds, a study of intellectuals in crisis and ideologies in transition. Um, Yeah, the Victorian era is way gone now. The Moral Imagination from Edmund Burke to Lionel Trilling. Okay, so Gertrude Himmelfarb, very incisive thinker. I highly recommend reading Gertrude Himmelfarb. Another lady, ex ex- like, yeah, big brain lady, Hannah Arendt, The Origins of Totalitarianism. It's one of my things. I am anti-totalitarian. Anything that reeks of totalitarian, like yeah, I am strongly against. So you can maybe figure out politically where I stand on the left or the right. The Human Condition, another social criticism, uh, Hannah Arendt. And finally, this is probably her most famous one. No, maybe The Origins of Eichmann in Jerusalem, a report on the banality of event. This was after, obviously, the Holocaust and the trials. Um, yeah. Okay, so Hannah Arendt. And then I put two books by Simon Leys. This is his pen name. I never remember their real names. Um, The Hall of Uselessness. I have this book. I've read several essays, but I'm going back to it every now and then. And then Chinese Shadows. This is his critique of Maoist China, the whole revolution, and just life under communism in China. Good stuff. Anyway, okay, that's it. So that's my intermittent reading. And then finally, things that I have upcoming, things that I want to get to, I don't know, within like the next 4 or 5 months, maybe 3 to 6 months, somewhere along those lines. I want to read Saifuddin Ammous. Ammous is kind of like, not kind of like, he's an Austrian economist. He's very polemical, which I really enjoy, but he's very good at teaching what he teaches because he's 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 very articulate and he knows his topic thoroughly, like thoroughly. And when you get somebody who's articulate and thorough and has some kind of reasoning ability, has some kind of logic to his thought, you get the clearest explanations you could ever want. And a moose gives you that. And 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 anytime you argue for your position in a very clear and logical manner, it's very compelling. It doesn't mean you're correct, but what you're saying is compelling. But you might be leaving stuff out, or you just might be overlooking stuff that's not so in, you might be overlooking stuff that's counterintuitive, so it's obvious it's not, so it's no sin that you overlooked it. So I'm not saying Austrian economics is the best economic theory. I think it is. Like if I had to bet, like my money would be on Austrian economics over the Chicago school, and then the other schools don't even get a mention. Like yeah, so yeah, Keynesian economics is a joke. Communism is obviously a farce. Anyway, so yeah, so Seyfedin Ammous, there's other very, very good Austrian economists, by the way. But yeah, one book at a time. And his book, I think the starting point for everybody, if you're gonna read Ammous, if you have like if you're just getting your feet wet into economics or Austrian economics, is the Bitcoin Standard, where he explains to you what's the difference between hard money and soft money. In other words, what makes one kind of money good and another kind of money bad? And this precursor of understanding the, what makes money good and bad is going to like give you a strong foundation into economics, and also why he advocates, which he'll explain better than I can, for Bitcoin, capital B. You can use Bitcoin as a generic term for like cryptocurrency, but the capital B is a particular kind of Bitcoin. Right. Okay. Um, and he has a bunch of videos online. I think he offers classes, which I don't know. If I had kind of money, like I don't know. I don't know if I would take the classes, not because there's anything wrong. I don't know the class is good or not. Like just like yeah, I have to economize on my money because I only have so much. I can't use it for everything. But if I had it, like it seems worthwhile. Same thing with Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson has like an academy online. Good stuff. Uh, Also good stuff is like Hillsdale College has some courses. Like Hillsdale College is great. Like to me, is a great university. But anyway, so let me get sidetracked here. Next, Jordan Peterson. I have, and it's been sitting on my shelf for I don't know how many years, and it just like it mocks me. Maps of Meaning. I think Maps of Meaning is like War and Peace. People have it, but they never read it, right? Like if somebody tells me they've read Maps of Meaning, I want to sit down and hear what they got out of it. Because for me, my like I'm already like cynical, so I'm like I doubt it. I doubt you've read it. Like me, I doubt people have read this book when they say they've read it. Not that I meet people who say they've read it, but I would doubt it. But I'd be open to listening to what they say, and I'd be interested in their takeaways and their observations. Um, yeah, so Maps of Meaning, I started to read it, but it's heady stuff. So I had to put it down because I wasn't ready at that time period to like give it my focus. And like as I'm getting older, like it's just harder in general for me to focus, to sit there and think the way I used to. Which leads me to my final philosophy. Philosophy takes the most energy from me. Like, I need to have a good night's rest. I need to be in the right mood, the right frame of mind to do philosophy. Because it's very easy to do shoddy work in philosophy. One, it's hard to be good at philosophy, which I'm not saying I'm good, but that's what I strive to do. I strive to do good work in philosophy. I strive to produce quality papers because when I do philosophy, I write papers. Like I don't just sit there and think and like, no, I have to write because to me, it's the only way to do philosophy. If you're not writing, to me, you're not doing philosophy. Like your philosophy will make itself clear to you once you start writing it down. Once you start articulating your thoughts, and then like I think there's a difference. Like it's like if you go to class and you're listening to a lecture, let's say the teacher's explaining how to do certain problems in calculus, and you're like, oh, okay, okay, I get it, I get it, I get it. But then you go home and you try to do your homework, and you're like, what? I'm like, you're confused, you're lost, you're like, you don't know what you're doing. You're like, wait, wait, wait. I thought I got it. Like it's not that you got it and then you lost it by the time you got home. It's that you never had it. You never understood. It's one thing to follow along in the lecture and like think you understand, to have the feeling you understand. Like we have this feeling all the time. We have feelings all the time. But whether they correlate to actual, yeah, to actual ability or skill, like that's different. So you can feel like you understand, but not understand. Right. And then philosophy to me is always like that. You can think you understand, but you don't understand until you write it. And so is the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding is what you can write. And and you'll see, I think we have the ability to like to see where when our feeling doesn't match with reality. So like if you have a philosophical theory and you're like, oh, this is right, this is right, this is right, this seems right. And then you're like, okay, now let me put this on paper. Once you start putting it on paper, you'll look at what you've written objectively, and you're like, no, this isn't this doesn't move me. This is not as compelling as I thought it was when I was just thinking about it. Like I'm no longer convinced that this is right because I think we have the ability to make these kind of judgments. Now some people don't, just because they're like, yeah, they're deluded or they're married to their ideas and they can't, they just can't give them up. Like they for some reason, like, yeah, they have a hard time abandoning certain ideas, especially ideas that like they've like come up with, or just for some reason like they have a strong attachment to them. For me, I don't care. Like I will drop certain a lot. I'm like ideas are just ideas. They're not mine, right? So like if I can like yeah, if I can disavow some wrong ideas, like I'm happy to do so, right? So anyway, so philosophy. My interest in philosophy is analytic, except with the exception of Nietzsche. Nietzsche is the only non-analytic that I would like that I devote any kind of time to. Um, so I want to get back to reading some Frege, some Russell, and some Wittgenstein, not only because the topics they wrote about are of interest to me. I'm like my favorite subfield in philosophy is philosophy of language. And yeah, a lot of what they wrote is on philosophy of language and logic. I like logic. I'm not like a big fan of logic, but I like logic. I have some ability. I can do some logic, but I'm not like some people are like just they yeah, some people are really into logic and like they do all kinds of logic and like no, I can do propositional logic, but yeah, but after that, there's not much. Anyway, so and I also like the history of analytic philosophy, so Frege, Russell, and Wittgenstein come into play there. Um, I like I wouldn't say I like ethics, but I have my own ethical views, ethical theory, which is a form of moral particularism, which I came up with on my own. There are famous philosophers like Jonathan Dancy, who's well, he's famous for espousing a certain form of moral particularism, but I came to my theory without reading Dancy. But after I came to my theory, he came like yeah, he came to my attention. I have a couple of books of his which I haven't really gone through deeply. I like epistemology and metaphysics. I like the idea of time. Uh, yeah, I can't wrap my head around it. Infinity, I cannot wrap my head around infinity. Uh, but mostly philosophy of language and I think epistemology. Um, okay, yeah, that's it. So I don't have really any recommendations for Frege, Russell, and Wittgenstein. I think it wouldn't really be like I wouldn't recommend philosophy to laymen, honestly. And if you're into philosophy already, if you have a back, you don't need my recommendations for what to read for Frege or what articles by Russell, what articles or what books by Wittgenstein. Um, yeah, so I haven't done it. But I have a bunch of books uh, by Frege or on Frege or both, let's say. Same with Russell and same with Wittgenstein. Obviously with Wittgenstein, the Tractatus and the Philosophical Investigations, but also other books like On Certainty and then I also have a lot of secondary sources because yeah, I think although I try to shun secondary sources when I read, and even when I do secondary sources, I almost never read them first. I always tackle, for example, Frege, and then and on my own, like, and then I tackle what Russell's saying on my own, and I tackle what Wittgenstein's saying on it on my own. Except the one exception is the Tractatus. Like, I very quickly realized I had no idea what I was reading when I was reading the Tractatus, so I had to go to other sources, and those and various sources. I have like 4 or 5 books that are giving me like interpretations of what Wittgenstein's doing in the Tractatus. And then after reading those 4 or 5 books, or like several of the chapters in those 4 or 5 books, I got an understanding of what Wittgenstein was doing, and then I can see a little bit better when I start to do Wittgenstein on my own. Anyway, that's it. So these are the yeah, these are my studies, these are my interests, and some of the book recommendations. I don't necessarily recommend this if you're an adult. Get a better annotation, get a better edition than the Mowat Wernstein or Wernstein editions. I'm liking Win with the Evans Gambit by Victor Nuestroev. Um, and I think most of you would enjoy The Hall of Uselessness by Simon Leys. It's a more like, I don't know, it's not light-hearted, but it's just is it's just more engaging reading. Um, unless you're into these other topics, like there's nothing wrong with Himmelfarb or Rent as far as writers, but some of this stuff is like serious stuff, right? The origins of totalitarianism is not light, fun reading. The Human Condition is not light, fun reading. Eichmann in Jerusalem is not light, fun reading. Victorian Minds, again, if you're interested in this period, then these are great books. Um, but Simon Leys talks about lots of things. I could mention Joseph Epstein as another, like, if you want to read cultural criticism that keeps it kind of light, a little bit humorous, not completely humorous in like jokey way, but like not so serious all the time, like Joseph Epstein. Uh, like I would maybe recommend Joseph Epstein, looking into Joseph Epstein and Theodore. This is his pen name. Again, I don't know his real name. Well, I learned it once, but I never remember. Theodore Dalrymple. Dalrymple. Rimple. These two guys, or these two authors, for cultural criticism, um, yeah, literary criticism, social criticism that aren't too serious, but still good insights, erudite, great life experiences, uh, and they have something to teach us. Okay, that's it. I'll take these out now. Oh, oh, oh. All right. I hope I haven't bored you guys, but what can I say? I have a monotone voice, and the things I talk about aren't particularly interesting to most people. All right, later. I gotta go.